Today on Nova Legends podcast, I have Emory midfielder Josh Grand, guy who played his club ball up in Northern Virginia. I played with my son for many, many years at Barca, now Dorados, and JOGA. Josh then went into what we were calling then the DA, played for Ken Krieger, recently passed. Then Josh went to high school over in Europe. His mom took a job there. His dad works remotely. And I played for some Dutch academies while going to the American high school. I forget what they called over there, but ended up back in Atlanta, finished at the Atlanta International School and played soccer there, played club. And now he's playing Emory going into his junior year. Josh, good to see you. Did I get all that right?
Yeah. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Good to see you again too.
Yeah, man, good to see you. So, Josh, we just finished the Olympics and US, it was a disappointment. The Copa America was a disappointment. They usually are. Whenever we lose tournaments, everyone always has these huge reasons why we lost. It's our way we develop our players. It's too many of our players were playing overseas. There's always theories. As a player who's played all over the world and you've been in foreign academies, do you ever have any theories as to why we come up short? Do you think it's something fundamentally the problem in how we raise our players?
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty overarching question. I think the main difference I saw in the Netherlands versus the US of how academies functioned was one, a bit more cutthroat, just in terms of you're in 1 week, you're out the next, and that really fostered more competition. And I think the other was the speed of play. Just those guys are able to think much faster. So it's not necessarily a skill thing. I think everyone here, not everyone, but the top players here are just as skilled as some of the players abroad. But their ability to think faster, to play faster, and to be hungrier, I guess, is the big one. Because when you watch the U.S. national team, they rarely look hungry to score goals. They're hungry to get a 0-0 draw or to connect a few passes, but there's not the same edge that some of these other countries have, especially in South American countries. Yeah.
Yeah. So, how important was it for you to have this? I think it was 2 years in Holland, and I know you went again with my son. You guys did lots of different tours for a couple weeks at a time. But how important was that as a player for you to have that experience with the speed of play? I remember when you guys were young, the little Dutch kids were 2-footed at a very young age. That's one thing that struck me. And they defended with their shoulders at a very either little kids, but they were very physical defenders at a very young age. But anyway, how important was that to your development?
Yeah, I mean, I was a pretty small kid as well, and it's definitely the physicality helped, but also yeah, like I said, the speed of play and in tandem with the physicality, but forcing yourself to think faster, play faster, and just be a step ahead of what you're used to. And I think that was a big lesson from playing in the Netherlands, but then also just as a person, that was a really meaningful and formative experience because you're getting used to, like, yeah, obviously different style of play for soccer, but different style of living too, and that definitely builds a different type of character building. So yeah.
Yeah, Keph used Coach Keph, who coached you at Joga, used to always talk about how that independence leads to you being a better player because you learn how to exist in these kind of environments where folks are often hostile. So, but do you think though, you're a second team all conference, I believe, last year at Emory. Is that true, Josh?
Yeah.
And you're on the preseason All American list that came out, I saw today. Do you think you'd have been the exact same player if you didn't have that European experience, or you think that made you the player, helped make you the player you are today?
No, yeah, definitely not. I think those 3 years were extremely formative, and I learned so much, which sticks with me now, obviously, and it really shaped how I play. I think I was a much different player. I mean, obviously, age uh, affects a lot, but I was a much different player before I started playing in the Netherlands until after, and even now, I think a lot of the way I play is modeled by that. So.
Yeah. Well, when you think about, I want to get back to the Netherlands and talk about going to high school there, but when you think about playing club ball here, and now you probably caught the end of this, is MLS Next instead of DA academies. There's always a new flavor,
Yeah.
in the manner in which we organize our leagues. So players are constantly trying to decide, do I go ECNL, do I go MLS next, and all these things. Do you think we have, whereas we were in the Netherlands, as you remember, the clubs, even if it's a local club, they have their academy, and those academies play. And then if you do well at a young age, you may go to Alkmaar, to AZ, and then if you do really well, then maybe Ajax will buy you or pick you up or whatever. It's a totally different system. Do you think our system is flawed in some ways? I know you don't want to be too critical, but do you see the weakness in our system?
No, for sure. I think I mean, having played DA, there you kind of like adopt this superiority complex because like you're in the top bracket and there's nothing that anyone else can do to kind of question that. Whereas in the Netherlands, it was like my team was in the third division, and we in the cup you still play against like all these professional teams, and then we finished in the top half of our, or top three of our table, and then we end up playing in these like promotion playoffs versus the relegation from the other side. So you end up playing all these professional academies, and it keeps you on your toes, because like we would beat the professional academies as well. And so it's, you don't have the comfort of just like, yeah, I'm the best. Like I'm in the top sphere. Like I don't need to worry about dropping down. I don't need to worry about like another person being better. And I think there's something to be said for constantly being pushed and moved out of your comfort zone by people who may be below you at the time, but obviously are just as skilled or even better than those DA players were.
Yeah, I remember one time, Josh, we were playing. It was our first game, one of those tours, and we were playing a really good team. That was when Coach Yannick was coaching us that one game. And remember that really good team he played? They had blue and gold on. I don't remember the name of the team, but anyway, there was a famous coach that was right next to me watching the game. I can't remember his name now, but you would know him. And he said, so I didn't know why he was there scouting like this local regional game. And I said, "Are you here looking at the American kids?" And he says, "No, I'm here watching the other Dutch kids." So as you were saying, you have to be hungry, because they're always looking for kids to take your place. So he was looking for kids at this lesser regional academy to plug into his team. So no matter what happens, if you're not playing well, there are players waiting to take your position.
Yeah, no, 100%. It really, I mean, that's with anything in life, but having the competitive edge pushes you to be better, and I think that's kind of what was lacking a bit here.
Yeah. So I want to get back to Holland, but I wanted to ask you a little bit about Barca. So you didn't play Arlington travel back then. We thought travel soccer was Arlington travel. We didn't really know there was any other option. So if either you play travel soccer or you don't, there's not like a choice. But as you remember, Chandler was waitlisted on Arlington, so I ended up he ended up going to Barca, and then you had the dilemma in that you had Hebrew classes at night for your bar mitzvah years away, and you couldn't sign a pledge that they were taking for kids. And basically, we pieced together a team with like 4 or 5 Arlington kids. Sully was there, and Matthew Callan, and a few more, and we had a really great experience. When you think about that experience with a startup, do you think your life would have been different than if you would have signed up and played Arlington travel and been like Nate Woods and everybody else, all the other top players? How do you think that impacted your development plan for Barca?
No, well, first of all, my dad reminded me when I told him I was coming on this that much of my soccer career is thanks to you and for you pulling me away from basketball and baseball, all those other sports, and getting me real committed into it. So I obviously give my thanks to you, and then Coach David and Coach Junior from Barca.
Nice of you to say, but you were a great athlete. You were going to make it with or without me, but it's really nice of you to say.
No, you really pushed me, and as well as Coach David and Coach Junior, because then I really fell in love with the game. I think it gave me a different perspective that like, yeah, I don't know. I haven't thought about it in a while, but it definitely gave me a different perspective of like, one, I'm doing this because I love it, not because it's like the common path or whatever. But also, it was a much different group of players, and I think that was like a big reason why I still love soccer now, and why I fell in love with it was that I was surrounded by people who I wasn't like, not the normal Arlington crowd. It was a different group, and that's kind of what soccer is all about, is like the accessibility of it, that anyone can play, and that you're able to get these different perspectives that otherwise in my bubble I would not have gotten. So that was, yeah, I think as a player, but also as a person, it really shaped me and made me fall in love with the sport.
Yeah, it's interesting because, years later when Chandler played for Yorktown and, he wanted me to remind you, if you would have played for Yorktown, they would have won this. They lost in the state final. They would have won it if you would have stayed. But when he
So
when he when he showed up at tryouts, no one really knew him, even though he had played against some of the kids in state cup and stuff, and he went to school with some of the kids, but they didn't really know him as a player. And I remember when he was so much different than the rest of the kids. He played differently. He was just his whole mentality was different because he had played with different kids. He had played with Barca and also Keph. So he had a very different way of playing. And I remember how helpful that was to the team to have this really unique type of player playing with a bunch of kids. Almost all of them played with Arlington Travel, Tristan Kickbush, all these kids that you know really well. And you drop like a JOGA type player in there, which you would have been as well. It was actually a really good combination.
yeah, definitely a different way of playing, but one which I'm glad I adopted for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about JOGA. So Coach Keph, kind of a mad scientist type, and played his high school ball in Georgia, where you are. He was definitely a guy that was willing to buck the system and try different things. And he set up a really small club, and you and Chandler took a chance on it. It was an amazing year. We played with Ike, who's doing really well, and his brother Jay. I'm going to leave out players like Mark. He's doing really well at Radford. Noah was a great player. What's the kid down going to Georgia Tech?
Xander, yeah,
Xander at Georgia Tech was
yeah,
a really nice.
big guy.
So many great players that we play. How can I forget E-Man? But Chandler credits Keph with so many different things he learned about the game. He does some private coaching and stuff now. And whenever I watch a game with him, he'll say something to me that I didn't know. I said, "Who taught you that?" He says, "That's Keph." And he always credited Keph with a lot of his development, the things that he learned about the game. How did yoga affect your development, and what did you learn from Coach Keph?
No, yeah, it was definitely a bit untraditional compared to the other programs around, and I think that was really important in like shaping how I look at the game. I think in terms of in the Netherlands, I learned how to play the game. Not that I didn't at JOGA, but like the speed of play. But at JOGA, it was an introduction to that, but it was also like a different way to look at the game of soccer and just yeah, I don't know. It was really a different way of getting trained, and I think the biggest part was it was like really intense and competitive, and that's one reason why I love soccer, but then also just fun and like he let us play essentially. He let us do what you want to do, and that's like the creativity and the individual freedom to express yourself was another reason why I fell in love with soccer, which was something that maybe at Arlington or like these more textbook programs I would not have gotten. I didn't get. And I think, yeah, that was really important to just like understanding myself as a person, as a player, and implementing that and improving myself.
Yeah, then we had those awesome 2 week trips to Holland. I mean, those are some of the most fun weeks that I can remember. Just watching
Yeah.
soccer and watching you guys play, hanging out with your dad. Really good times. Well, then it had to come to an end because they came up with this DA thing, and it was putting a lot of pressure on top players to try out, and Joga was a little bit unstable because Keph was talking about going over to Holland for a while.
Mm.
So most of the kids played on one of the DA teams in Arlington. He played for Ken Krieger, another legendary local figures. Tell us about that experience playing DA and playing for Coach Krieger.
Yeah, it was definitely a good experience. It was like I said, kind of played into the superiority complex, or like the prestige of it all was really nice. I mean, after playing at JOGA and Barca for a while, which was super fun and I learned a lot. But it definitely didn't have the same prestige of like going and playing and at these MLS stadiums and playing these other DA teams and being on that different like strata. And that was very cool. I think from a soccer perspective, Ken Krieger was a bit more textbook than Keph might have been. But yeah, there was lessons to take away from that as well. It wasn't necessarily by any means a bad thing. Just a different way of looking at the sport and looking at how to play.
Hmm. How would you compare to the DA, what you learned there and the coaching there, and the intensity of it to, I don't know you talked about superiority, but with what you experienced in Holland. And I mean, Krieger is one of the most respected names in American, and at least the area soccer. But how would you compare that to the experience you had when you were in Holland?
Yeah, it was closer to like the cutthroat, I guess, environment. Like he definitely created a pressure cooker, and there are good parts and bad parts of that. But I think it definitely taught me how to perform under pressure, and that's what is a very important skill in soccer and in life, which I learned. But I would also say that I don't know. This is a brutal thing to say, but I think the a lot of the coaches in the Netherlands just have a different like level of nuance to their understanding of the game, even compared to maybe Keph. But I mean, they eat, sleep, and breathe it since they were like 5 years old. And I had this one coach, Case Kudo. He's an 85-year-old guy, and I mean, he's been a coach his entire life, and he knew every single like he looked at the game from a completely different lens. And I like one of the funniest and kind of painful, most painful stories I have from when I first moved to the Netherlands was like about a month in, and I was playing. I still didn't know Dutch yet. It took me a few months to really learn it, and obviously all the coaching was being done in Dutch. And he like pulls everyone in after we're playing for a bit, and he says something, Josh, something, something. Everyone starts laughing, and I'm like, I have no idea what he said, but it's kind of a shitty feeling. And then I pull one of the other kids away who went to my school, and I asked him what he said, and he's like I'll tell you, but this isn't great. And he ended up saying like, see, Josh, he's very good at soccer, like he knows the feet, but he has no idea how to play the game.
Yeah.
And that was kind of just a brutal introduction to Dutch soccer that like I was not playing the same sport as them.
Yeah, I remember when you came back and you and Chandler played in the 3-on-3 tournament or 5-on-5 tournament, whatever, during the winter time. You came back to visit. And I remember how different you were just after 3 months. I remember how much calmer you were on the ball. And I remember how the game looked slower to you, and that you could, no matter what happened, you could deal with it. And that was, and I'd watched you play, probably hundreds of times as a kid. And I could see a radical change in your game just from 3 or 4 months. In Holland. Was it a tough decision for you to drop everything and move to
Yeah,
Holland?
for sure. I mean, um, it was a while ago, so I will say like it's all a bit blurry nowadays on what exactly went into it. But I mean, in the end, I'm extremely thankful that I did. I obviously, as a soccer player, I developed a lot, but as a person, like just yeah, having the independence and the freedom and experiencing a new culture is something which I mean, I wish everyone could experience, especially at such a young age, because it really shaped me pretty profoundly and um yeah, even beyond soccer, that's why I am who I am today because of that experience for sure.
Yeah. So so when you went to Holland, what team were you on, and how did they decide? I mean, it's organized radically different. I mentioned earlier they have clubs, and these clubs go all the way from like a pro-am type situation, some are pro, but pro all the way down in age group and also in level, because different age groups could play their way up and down the ladder. But how did you find a club, and who did you play for?
So I played for Amsterdam FC, which is like I wouldn't say arguably, objectively the biggest amateur club in Amsterdam, which there are like hundreds of them. It's pretty incredible, but it's the biggest amateur club, which means that their first team is in the third division. But a lot of their academies are in the first or second, but they keep the first team there so it's like retains the amateur status. But so it's essentially a feeder club to Ajax, AZ, like all of the big professional clubs in the area. So you have a lot of really famous players who have gone through there. Daley Blind, Brian Brobby, like a lot of big Ajax names, and I think Matthijs de Ligt as well. And so it's a very historic club. It's older than Ajax. It's one of the oldest clubs in the world. And I was put in contact with them through Yannick, a scout who worked with JOGA, and luckily performed well in my trial. And yeah, it was a bit of an interesting 3 years because they have like 7 or 8 teams per age group, and I was just on the cusp between the first and the second for about 3 years straight. So I would be able to train with the first team, and then I kind of move into the first team, and I wouldn't really play. And then the coach would get sacked because they weren't doing well, and the new coach didn't like me. And then I'd go to the second team, and then I'd be the captain, play really well on the second team, and start kind of moving up again. It was back and forth, and it was unfortunate. I do think like there was a bit of a barrier. You could, as an American, they definitely preferred the Dutch and looked down on me a bit, but taught me a lot about resiliency because ultimately you can't really control those things. And as well as I thought I was playing at times, it's not up to me all the time. But it really was a cutthroat environment because it was like you're either playing against, when I would play with the first team, like the Swedish national team or like these extremely high level pro clubs, and then you go to the second team and you're still playing good players, but you don't have the same prestige. And so that's kind of the difference of what I was explaining between DA and the rest of American soccer is like I was the one looking up or I was the one looking down multiple times throughout those 3 years. But there was movement, whereas in the U.S. system, I think there isn't really any movement. It's a shame because definitely taught me a lot.
Yeah. Well, Josh, I remember you more of an 8, maybe a 10, but more of an 8 as your position. Did your position change? Was that, first of all, is that true? And did your position change when you were in Holland?
Yeah, I mean, I would go anywhere. Once I got up to the first team, I would go anywhere they needed me. Which could be left back, right back, winger, center mid, which is kind of all what soccer is about. When I started at Emory, I played as a winger for my entire first year, and then now I'm back in my cam position. Yeah, I would say I've drifted more from like a 6 and 8 to a 10, but definitely taught me how to play a lot of different positions and to be flexible because it is soccer. It's a fluid game, and that's how it works.
Yeah. Daniel and Johannes also thought that you were being held back because you're in America. He thought you were a much better player than some of the kids that were in front of you. So, but did you feel if the coaches had a bias, and I know you didn't say they necessarily did, but did the other players treat you with respect? Did you get the respect of the other Dutch kids?
Yeah, I think there were some that were skeptical. Obviously, I would like to think I'm a pretty sociable guy, so made friends pretty quickly. And they were definitely very accepting. It wasn't necessarily like they would look down on me per se, but they definitely held their reservations probably longer than they would have if I wasn't American.
So, Josh, you stayed all 3 years at AFC when you were there?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. See, okay. So let's talk a little bit about going to high school there. That must have been an amazing experience going to high school in Holland and meeting people from all over the world. And I'm sure most of the folks were probably American, but you probably had English speakers from all over, though, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I went to an international school, and the demographic of the high school was pretty diverse, which it was awesome because I experienced a lot of different cultures, and my best friends now are British, Dutch, Indonesian, from all over. And they go to school all over the world, which is a shame because I don't get to see them as much. But it definitely was an eye-opening experience and a much different way of living. Those guys are all used to biking to school or doing whatever they want from the age of like 3 and without parent supervision, whereas in the US it's a bit different.
Yeah, so after school you could hang out. I mean, I remember when we were in Holland, we would let you guys walk around town, and you guys were 13 to 14 years old. It's probably a safe way to grow up.
Yeah, for sure. I think when it becomes a norm, it's pretty widely accepted, and I never really felt in danger at all, even though I was like 12 years old biking through the streets at midnight for going back to my house or anything. It was just normal there.
Yeah. Well, that's it. That's an That's an awesome experience. So one thing about Europe, it's different than America, and it doesn't necessarily apply to soccer because a lot of times top soccer players don't play high school. But
Yeah.
football and basketball are tied to your scholastic team. In Holland and Europe, I know in England they do have a high school soccer teams, but still your club is always your most important team. Do you think that's a good thing? Like in Holland, there wasn't really sports teams that were so important that it helps you just be like a normal student, or did you miss that kind of connection with high school sports in high school?
Well, we actually still had a high school team. We would play all the other international uh, schools, so there would be this huge tournament where,
Oh,
and we
cool.
would go like to Hamburg or to Dusseldorf for weekends. And I was usually able to do that with club, um, which was a really cool experience. We like kind of meshed together well. Uh, so I actually did get that experience, and then obviously when I moved to Atlanta, I fully got the experience like winning a state championship and having your whole school come out. But no, I think that's like also a pretty invaluable experience. Maybe not the most competitive or high levels, but it's fun. I
Yeah,
would say.
yeah. Well, how did you feel when you heard your parents were moving back home? Were you excited to come back to the United States? I know you have a lot of family in Georgia because you used to spend every summer at summer camps with your cousins.
Yeah, yeah. No, I have a huge community here. I honestly, it was pretty difficult leaving Amsterdam, because it's Amsterdam and it's a great city, and I, in a way, grew up there like in some formative years, and also it was the middle of COVID, so I was
Oh,
leaving
that's
my
right.
best friends and coming to a new city, going to a school that was online, so I wasn't actually going to school. Uh, and then I very shortly thereafter tore my ACL. So it wasn't the easiest transition, um, but I did it, and I came out better on the other side.
Yeah. Once you got healthy, what was the transition back to domestic soccer? Did it seem much slower because you'd played in Europe?
Yeah, I mean, I was on a very good team when I first came, my junior year, with like the entire team plays Division 1 now, and with a pretty, it was similar like Coach Krieger coaching style, and so that it was intense as well, and I was glad that I could kind of keep that up. It definitely was different. I don't think like you could express yourself as freely, and uh it wasn't as flowing, I guess, as the European game, but it was. I mean, it's soccer, so like you adapt and kind of hone your skills from past experiences into your new one.
Yes, so I know you played at the American International School, and I was following you, and I saw that you guys, made a run at the state tournament. Now, in Georgia, the private schools play with the public schools. Isn't that correct for soccer?
We would play like non-region games against all the big public schools, but once it got to the tournament, it was all private versus private.
Right. And was the level of play, was it high at the private school level?
No, not particularly.
Oh,
We had a very good team, like all ECNL and MLS Next players, which made it a pretty easy run, and it was really fun being able to assert your dominance over. But it wasn't necessarily a high level, no.
yeah. Did you miss your friends back in Northern Virginia, or by then you're almost were more of an Amsterdam native, and Northern Virginia was kind of, it was a long time ago, or do you still feel a connection up here?
No, I definitely still feel connection. I actually interned up in DC this summer
Oh,
for June, and it was nice being able to see some people. I mean, I'm sure like I'm pretty far removed. I haven't lived there in years, but it is still home to me, Arlington, and yeah, I think it's not something that you just kind of forget or like brush over it. It's really nice whenever I get to spend time there again.
are you often on the field with kids and like in the college level, and you kind of recognize them? I saw last year you played. I don't know if you know Daniel Sandell, but he was a star player, one of the star players on Chandler's team. He plays for Case Western. I know you played, of course, Mary Washington. So you probably see some players that probably look familiar to you from your years in Northern Virginia.
Yeah, no, it's not just Northern Virginia, Amsterdam, Atlanta, that like I've grown to meet so many players, people through soccer and even outside of soccer, but it all comes back to soccer, it seems like. But no, I'll be on the field. I can't even the countless games where I'll be on the field and like I recognize this guy. And then we kind of like both go up to each other after and we're like make the connection. And it's really cool because I mean Tristan obviously was one of Mary Washington. I can't really recall, but it feels like it happens every other game where it's like I kind of know you, and then you put the pieces together, and it's like, wow, it all ties together.
Yeah, especially because Emory's in a kind of elite conference with excellent academic institutions and a lot of kids from definitely Northern Virginia, but also I'm sure, as you said, Atlanta and Amsterdam. How about going south? Was it I know you visited your relatives in Georgia all your life, but after coming from Northern Virginia and Amsterdam, did Atlanta seem very southern to you and very different to you, or was that a non-factor?
Um, I mean, Atlanta's kind of like a blue bubble in the middle of the deep south. So you go anywhere, 30 minutes any direction, it begins to look a lot different. But Atlanta's a really cool city in its own regard. I think living here has been really cool and just experiencing a different culture. It's nothing like DC. I mean, it's not necessarily the exact same culture shock as moving to Amsterdam, but it is a culture shock in its own regard. And yeah, I think it's been really cool to travel around the South for soccer and uh, experience a different region of the country as well.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about choosing Emory. Obviously, an amazing school. I talked to your mother about that time, and I know one of the schools that was on your radar is William and Mary, I believe. Is that true, Josh?
Yeah, yeah.
So and you're a great player. I know you're coming off an injury, which is never the best situation to be in, of course. But what was your decision process in choosing Emory? I know that you had to have a Division I dream because you're always the most ambitious kids and you're talented kid. But Emory in soccer, the high level Division III teams are better than the bottom half of the Division I. So it's a very complicated decision. So anyway, talk about your decision going to Division III and also going to Emory.
Yeah, no, it was the longest process of my life. It was because I started it and I was pretty close to finishing it like the spring of my junior year, and then I skied into a tree and tore my ACL and it all restarted. And yeah, so I kind of started from scratch. And ultimately, when it came time to make the decision, I had a lot of different offers just from a wide range of schools, like big D1 schools, like smaller D1 schools, Emory. And it kind of just came down to I realized that it wasn't about like what it looks like online. Like it doesn't. It's obviously really cool when someone posts their Division I commitment picture on Instagram, a high school senior. But uh, looking back, that would have been a terrible reason to make the decision. And so I began to kind of think a bit deeper about it. Obviously, academics was like the priority for my parents and myself. And the social life is also like having a balance was really big. And then in terms of soccer, just being able to make a difference and not just sit on the bench uh and actually go for a national championship. And I think I mean, I've definitely it's been a fruitful decision. I'm the captain of the team now, and we're ranked third in the country for a good part of last year, and we're able to make a tournament run. I think we'll go even further this year. But yeah, just being able, this is essentially, unfortunately, probably my last 4 years of competitive soccer, and being able to make the most of those 4 years and actually being able to play the game you love instead of maybe just like watching it or suffering through it, is honestly what I would say is the biggest thing in the college process that I mean, and the academics, as my parents remind me, but like, yeah, you want to play the sport. Like you're going to college to play the sport. You want to be able to put yourself in a position where it's going to be the most enjoyable experience in that sport.
Yeah. As you know, I follow the last couple classes that are playing college because they were Chandler's teammates and competitors growing up. So I know them so well, and I've kept up with most of the kids, and it's amazing how few kids play at the Division I level their first year or two. Most of them got very little playing time. Many kids didn't even play that much for the Division III teams, and that includes kids that played in DC United Academy and great places. These schools and these rosters are so competitive. It's just hard to get opportunities. Now, and also I noticed that you tied Washington and Lee last year. Was that your first? Yeah, last year. You beat Catholic. I believe you beat Case Western as well. I've seen all three of those teams play, and they have a lot of Division I type of talent. When you're playing at that level, and the way college sports are now, with the portal and stuff, you don't have to stay at a college anymore. Um, does it ever get tempting for top players at Division III to look around, or is there also a recognition that there's great soccer at all levels? What difference does it make?
Yeah, that's kind of what I realized after my first year. Obviously I was lucky enough to be able to come in and start right away, and my coaches had uh incredible confidence in me as a freshman, which like is pretty rare. It seems now with our 40-man rosters and 10 grad students you have coming in every year. But yeah, it's obviously you're always striving for more, but I think taking a step back and taking a more holistic approach, like I had everything kind of going for me at Emory, and I didn't really need to go somewhere else for name's sake. I think um, there wasn't any, or there, yeah, I wouldn't say there was much that would have been more appealing to me in that moment than staying at Emory. And especially now, like I have my best friends there, and I have, like we've built a very good program, and I have so much more to look forward to that I'm not really like tempted by the grass is greener. It's green, and I'm enjoying it. So I don't really have any reason to look around.
Yeah, that's great. Um, uh, how about players that are, they have pro ambition, and they've been playing soccer all their lives. They really have never thought about what else they're going to do with their lives besides play soccer. So they may hold on to that dream. Do you think those players can still go to Division III and think about playing pro? I recently interviewed the Mount St. Mary's coach, great guy, Coach Teach, and he was talking about how he took a summer league team with some Mary Washington players and stuff. He just doesn't think that's that much of a difference. There's a lot of players that are on Division III. If they're ambitious enough and they get the right breaks, who knows? How do you feel? Do you think if you have those ambitions that you might be able to still do that from Division III?
No, for sure. I mean, we have so many players that come transfer from Division I schools. In my 3 years I've been here, or two, now 3 years, and they're great players, but like even they'll admit there's not that much of a difference. I think obviously once you get to the Power 5 schools and you start to see like the difference in athleticism, and just like average player skill, then there is a discrepancy. But there's nothing to say that like, um, yeah, I think it's largely namesake. I don't think there's too big of a difference once you actually get down to it.
Yeah. Well, Josh, you played for a guy named Coach Grainer. Did I pronounce his name right? Yeah.
Griner, yeah.
And your freshman year, you guys struggled a little bit. It was about a 500 year, maybe a little bit less. But last year, you won the conference. You got to the second round of the NCAA tournament. So I think it was an amazing year all in all. What's his style of coaching? How would you describe him?
He's a great guy. He's kind of just like one of the guys, all of our friend. But he's serious about winning and about getting the small things down, because he also sees it more holistic. Like he's breeding men, and it's not just about the soccer itself. It's about everything that goes on in your 4 years there. And I think it's been fun to play under a coach that gives you a lot of freedom, especially myself. He's had a lot of faith in me and kind of just let me do my thing largely.
Mhm.
And yeah, being able to build that confidence has been big, and he's been a crucial part in doing that. And yeah, going from a pretty slow first season as a team and disappointing, but focusing thereafter on the mentality, because we have some of the best players in Division III, and we're always going to have one of the best teams on the field. But then like shifting to the mental aspect of the game and the will to win. And that was really what was the difference this past year. And uh, it was interesting to focus on that side of the game even more than like what you actually do with your feet, because having like the hunger to win is something which kind of defines our program right now.
Yeah, and I would think being a captain at a Division III school is huge because there's more restrictions on when you can practice. So you probably the captains have to get the boys together and get out in the pitch and run like a practice. Is that true? A captain does a lot more on a Division III team.
No, for sure. In the off season and even preseason, I think so. We start our captain's practice tomorrow, and we decided to come a week and a half early. There was no external pressures. It's started from the captains and from the team and people wanting to push ourselves to achieve a lot this year. And yeah, it's a lot of initiative because like in reality, none of us are here on scholarship, so we don't have to be doing this, but everyone's here because they want to do it. And so yeah, kind of leading the team towards that is big.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about last year and how it was a great turnaround for you. It must have been a huge moment when you tied W&L because the year before they'd gotten to the Final Four, maybe even the final. But I know they got to the Final Four. I interviewed the coach, great guy. God, I just slipped on his name. But anyway, you must have known that at that point you guys could have a very good team.
Yeah, so actually that first weekend I was sick. There was 3 or 4 players on our team who were sick and like our starters, and so we didn't really have many of our guys in. And we got a result. I mean, I think even the year before when we were bad, we tied W&L. So it's a bit of a rivalry game, but a game that we always feel we can get a result from. But from there on out, I mean, we won our first 5 conference games consecutively to win. So I mean, that's the biggest part of this sport too, is just confidence and it builds on itself and being able to start that way under those circumstances was really important. But it's ultimately all about confidence. I think this year we have even more than last year coming into it, which is very promising.
Yeah. It's interesting. I noticed you guys don't have a conference tournament. Is that true, Josh?
Yeah, yeah.
So it comes down to all the conference. It's almost like a table that you see like in Europe. So last year, you won the conference. You beat Catholic. They're not in your conference, but that's a big win. They were in the tournament the year before, the Final Four the year before, and you beat Case last year. So you won the regular season, and you get to the second round against Colorado, and that was a big game for you. You scored the only goal for Emory, and you also made your PK. Unfortunately, you didn't lose in penalties. Tell us a little bit about that second round game.
I actually didn't score the goal for the record. I made my penalty, but our captain scored. But no, it was pretty devastating way to end because we had very high hopes on making a deep run. Going back to the conference tournament thing, it did ultimately, I think, hurt us a bit because we did so well the first half or 3/4 of the season and then the first 5 games of the conference. So we won the conference and we had just 2 games left where we didn't have to win it all. And we had no real like hunger to win. And we end up losing those 2 games 1-0, both just like kind of like, again, back to the mentality, like without a real desire to win. And I think that kind of punished us once we got to the tournament because we were stuck in that mode a bit, but it was a brutal way to go because I think we were the better team. I will rematch them this year and see, but there was a lot of potential that was ended in the penalty shootout, but that's kind of how soccer and how life goes. It just sometimes doesn't go your way.
Yeah, well, good thing you get 2 more years, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so this season, I know you got Roanoke and Lynchburg early. You may remember Benji Velasquez from Lynchburg. Benji was one of the Woodbridge kids.
Yeah.
He's having a great career. So I'll definitely be tuned. I wish it was up here. I would make the trip down there, but I think it's down in Atlanta. Is that right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. So I know that's a few weeks away. So what are some of your goals for this year? I know, knowing you, Josh, you're probably not going to be happy if you don't get to that Final Four or possibly win it. But when you think realistically about the season, what are some of the goals?
No, I mean that's the goal is the national championship. I think It's in Vegas this year, which is another
Oh,
incentive
cool. Yeah.
for a lot of the guys on the team who are going to be 21, including myself for the first time. But no, I like we saw last year that we can really it's very attainable. I mean, we were so high up in the national rankings for so long that like we have even more talent coming in this year than last year, and so it's within reach. We just got to make it happen now, and I think the goals are pretty high, I would say. I really am hopeful for my own season, but more importantly, the team and how well and how far we're going to go in the tournament.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Josh, I know it's still early. You have 2 more years to develop and improve. What do you think? What is your future hold in soccer? Do you think you'll try for the next level? Do you think you'll get into coaching one day? Obviously, I'm sure when you have kids, you'll be like me and your father on the sidelines. Hopefully, more like your father than me. But what are some of your goals? Your goals in soccer?
Um, no, I love playing this sport and I want to play for as long as possible. I don't really know what that looks like after college. Once I go to grad school and get a job and see what that all holds for me. But definitely want to keep as many options open as possible. And uh, yeah, if I keep playing well, then you never know. But it's interesting trying to balance everything now that that's becoming in my peripheral. But yeah, I don't know. Kind of just seeing where it all takes me and I'll go from there.
You're very lucky. Think of a guy like Chandler who spent all his life playing soccer, basically didn't really do anything else. And then he wants to go to UVA, and I guess he can go to a Division III school, but it's gonna be one that costs a lot more money than I can
Yeah.
afford,
Yeah.
or one that's probably not great academically. So the options aren't great. So he's going to UVA, and there's like so many kids there that you would know, like Nate and Nathan Junn, and so many kids from Luca Rufy, all these kids that you guys grew up playing soccer with and against. But can you imagine those guys? All of a sudden, there's just no soccer.
Yeah.
There's intramurals. He's officiating. He's coaching and doing some training, but it is really tough on the player and also the parent. One day it just drops off a cliff. It's just like, whoa, what are we gonna do with ourselves?
Yeah, no, I don't know what my dad would do without his soccer fix. So I
Yeah.
can feel for you there.
Well, look, I wanted to start with that, but on YouTube, you have to front load like the big questions because people will stop listening to you. But how are your sisters doing? Um, Carly and Rachel.
Mhm.
And I follow your parents a little bit on social media, and your dad doesn't post much. But tell us a little about what your family's doing.
No, yeah, they're doing very well, all of them. My mom's at the Carter Center here and loving her job, and my dad's doing his thing, his own nonprofit and saving the Middle East one step at a time.
Yeah, good luck with
Uh,
that.
yeah, and then Rachel's working at the State Department right now in DC. So I was living with her this summer, and
Oh,
she's doing very well. She's doing uh working on gender-based violence and saving the world from that lens as well.
yeah.
And then Carly's up in New York City doing sustainability stuff, so saving the world for environmentally. But so everyone's doing their thing and enjoying what they do and they send their best wishes, especially my sisters to your daughters who they babysat.
Yeah, they got to connect. Dude, they wouldn't believe how big
Yeah, no, I'm sure.
Lily's at James Madison, and Chandler's, as you know, at UVA, and I have Olivia's. We moved up to Lansdowne, so Olivia's going to Riverside up here. We're out here in the country now.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it'll be great. It'll be great to see them. It's funny. Your mother, I met her at I believe it was Andy Orabashi's eighth or ninth birthday. First time I ever met your mom. And first time we hit it off right away. We're arguing about politics, and we are arguing about Jimmy Carter. The first time
Wow.
we ever
Wow.
met. And
Yeah.
usually you can't have those arguments with people because people get offended. But we were friends right away. Then I met your father. I think it was back to school night. Was like the 3 or 4 days later. It's amazing how I can remember all that. I can't
Yeah,
remember what
that's
happened last
wild.
week. But it's just when I saw that she was working with Jimmy Carter, that was great because that was our first connection. We were talking about politics and all that stuff. So Anyway, I'm glad they're doing well. And look, man, next time you're in DC for an extended period of time, look us up. I know Chandler
Yeah.
would love to see you as well.
No, no,
Um,
for sure, for sure. I'll hopefully be there, visit my grandparents soon enough, and I'll reach out and we'll all get together.
yeah, maybe we'll just play some soccer. Are your grandparents all doing okay as well, or?
Yeah, they're doing well. The ones in Atlanta and the ones in Falls Church, they're doing well. So
That's amazing because they have to be at least in their 80s now, right?
no, yeah, they're 80s and getting to their 90s. So it's no, it's pretty incredible. They're all four marching along. But yeah, it's nice to be close to them here too.
And they still live over there by Lake Barcroft.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, cool, awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, well, tell them I said hi. Hopefully they'll watch the video. They can hear it themselves. So, well, anyway, Josh, I really appreciate you doing this. Let's keep in touch. Have a great season, and
Thank
we'll
you.
definitely be following you up here in Northern Virginia.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to being back up there soon. So
Yeah, sounds great.
all
Yeah.
right,
All right,
bye.
Josh. Well, good luck. Good seeing you, buddy.
Good to see you too.
Yeah. Take care.